and good evening to everybody. Welcome to TapTalks. As you all know, Tap India has been founded as one of the COVID babies, and we have been a collective of galleries. We have been doing a lot of talks. We've been doing a lot of online shows and some curated shows. The Tap platform has grown over the last year and a half, and today we're very happy to welcome all of you to this very, very wonderful talk. And it's lovely to know that all of you are here with us. Today, we have two wonderful speakers, one of who was our first speaker, who was Madhuvanti Ghose. But let me begin by introducing both our speakers. Vikram Goyal is the founder of Via Home and is committed to the preservation of indigenous practices and the country's cultural heritage. He is a recipient of multiple design awards, and he is also the co-founder of Karma Ayurveda, a wellness brand dedicated to promoting the unique brands of Ayurveda. Goyal is the eldest grandchild of the late Gokul Lal Mehta, whose collection is featured in this fabulous book. Vikram is a design pioneer in contemporizing traditional Indian motifs. The traditional Nathdwara paintings have been a source of inspiration for his work, including the fabulous iconic repoussé installations that he does. Our next speaker, Madhuvanti Ghose, has also been our first speaker in the Tap Talk series. She is the first Alstorf Associate Curator of Indian and Southeast Asian and Himalayan art at the Art Institute of Chicago, where she is responsible for the exhibition, the collections, the preservation, and the research of the museum's permanent collection in these areas. Since joining the museum in 2007, she has curated and organized a series of exhibitions on Indian art, including the international loan exhibition, Gates of the Lord, the traditional paintings of Krishna paintings in 2015 and 2016 on the artistic traditions of the Vaishnava Pushtimargi sect. So Madhuvanti is going to talk to us about her exhibition to begin with. So today we're actually launching, we're celebrating the launch of Vikram's fabulous book. And we decided that we'd have this talk with both Madhuvanti and Vikram to celebrate the launch and to go further and discuss the idea of design collaborations and the design, the traditional design that's been coming into contemporary design in India, both in design as well as art. So this is a freewheeling chat. It's a fireside conversation. We're in the winter time, except for all our friends who joined us from Madras who are already in summer. But welcome to everybody. And thank you all for being here. Thank you so much, Madhu. And thank you so much, Vikram. So Madhu, over to you.
Thank you so much, Sharan. And thank you for your wonderful, warm welcome. And can't wait to deeper into this conversation. I'm going to start by sharing my screen. And I thought we would start with looking at a few images from Gates of the Lord. Well, you can't really start this conversation without looking at what Nathdwara looks like today. As you can see, it's a growing place. And this is, of course, the Haveli of Shrinathji, the temple of Shrinathji, which incidentally, today is the 10th of February. And way back in 1672, on the 10th of February, Shrinathji was actually installed for the first time in this Haveli. So today, in fact, we are marking his anniversary at Nathdwara as well. I thought we would start by looking at some images of the exhibition and understand what makes the Pushti Marg aesthetic so important, because I think you need to see that to understand the aesthetics of the book that Vikram has so lovingly put together. So one of the aspects of the Pushti Marg aesthetics is the fact that it plays a huge role in the way you create the right atmosphere for each season, for every part of the day, in fact, for one to view Shrinathji. all of your senses are impacted. So for example, in the summer months, the Seva and Shringara of Shrinathji includes fanning him, because after all, he is a 7-year-old boy. And you will see that people, even today, I mean, while this is a painting, even today, you will see people actually pouring water on the marble floors in front of the temple and inside the temple to keep the place cool, so that he is not hot during the summer months. And his clothing becomes more and more fine and less. The thinnest muslins are used, and nothing must bother his body. So there's, you start kind of removing all the things that might irritate him. But the other aspect of summer, of course, is white. So there's a lot of play with white. And, to that are, of course, added the beautiful flowers. Now, in the monsoon, in contrast, it's a time of remembering Krishna playing with the gopis in the different groves of Vrindavan. And so you see a lot of this play with the peacocks and, of course, the swings. Now, the autumn is one of the most important times of the calendar of Nathdwara and of the Pushti Marg Havelis. And that is when you celebrate the moon, as you do here in this Shringar that is called the Chandramaki Shringar, where Shrinathji is adorned in silver. And you're celebrating essentially the full moon. Well, the biggest celebration of the full moon is Sharat Purnima, when Krishna danced the Ras Leela with all the gopis, every gopi thinking that Krishna was dancing only with her. And that, of course, happened on the banks of the river, as you can see, of the river Yamuna, which you can see at the base of this huge Pichwai, which is in DC now. Another of the very important festivals during this time, of course, is Gopashtami, the day that celebrates Krishna becoming a cowherd. And some of the most exquisite Pichwais are hung on the occasion of Gopashtami, celebrating Krishna as a cowherd. And then in the winter, you see how different the colors are. Now you're celebrating Srinathji with these rich colors and adornments in vibrant, rich colors. And of course, he's completely dressed from head to toe to protect him from the winter cold. And spring, which is now, you have a celebration of colors from between Vasant Panchami and Holi. In fact, within the Pushti Marg Havelis, you've already started to celebrate Holi from Vasant Panchami onwards. So for 40 days, there's a play with the colors of Abir Khela, Gulal Khela, and Srinathji is, and the devotees all play, with Gulal, with colors from now on. I wanted to bring our focus back to this person that you see in this Kunj Ekadashi Pichwai. This is the young Tilkayat, the head of the Pushti Marg sect, Govardhan Lalji, who in the late 19th century established what was regarded in Nathdwara as a Swarn Yug, a golden age. And the important thing about Tilkayat Govardhan Lalji is, of course, the fact that under him, some of the most celebrated artists emerged. And one of them was Sukhdev Kishandar. And his work is very, very distinctive. And this brings us to the beautiful publication that Vikram has put together. Many of the paintings in this collection are by Sukhdevji, who in fact was the painting Mukhya, the first painting Mukhya ji, meaning the head of the artists of Nathdwara under Tilkayat Govardhan Lalji. And this is a time when in Vikram's family, the head of the family was the chief minister of the state of Mewar, Panna Lal Mehta, Rai Panna Lal Mehta. And this is his famous portrait done by Raja Ravi Varma. But what is such a revelation, even for me, was the fact that within the collection of Panna Lal Mehta that has come down to Vikram's grandfather, his Nanaji, are all these paintings actually showing the entire family in veneration at Nathdwara. They were major devotees of Nathdwara and in fact patrons of the Pushti Marg sect as well. So there he is, Pannalal Mehta and his son and the other members of the family on the occasion of a Phul Mandali. This is an entire bower made of roses. And as you can see, with everyone wearing white, that this is in the summer. And this is what the family member's portrait looks like, done by an artist from Nathdwara. And here is a beautiful pichwai that is showing Gopashtami, that celebration of the cows, when Krishna became a cowherd for the first time. And then again, you see the family members grouped together on either side. So at this point, I'd really like to invite Vikram to speak and share with us some of his thoughts about this exquisite book, which I hope all of you can see. It is huge and very heavy, and I can't hold it up for very long. But Vikram, I wanted to start by, first of all, congratulating you on the exquisite design of this book. But can you share a little bit about this collection and talk about the family and, you know, how this book came about?
Thank you, Madhu, and thank you, Sharan, for having me on the show. Well, Madhu, as you said, my mother's family, they're all ardent Shrinathji followers. She, her sisters, they grew up with Shrinathji around them in various forms, rituals and paintings. And I just want to read out from the foreword she wrote in the book, where she says, for us, these paintings are more than just pieces of art. They're a bridge that connects us to each other and our ancestors and to our devout faith in Shrinathji. Even today, for the family, no visit to Udaipur is complete without a trip to Nathdwara, purchases of vast amounts of prasad, which are then duly distributed within the family, no matter where they are. Among the many Srinathji pichwais and paintings they grew up with, this particular set was very special to my late grandfather. You know, he used to often romanticize that they be published for the world to see. And 2 years ago, I ran into Bipin Shah of Mapin, who, as you know, has produced some wonderful books on Indian art and culture, and also on Srinathji. And I found the perfect chance to make my grandfather's wishes come true. So I hope I've succeeded in doing that.
Well, you have indeed, but the book is not an ordinary book. It has it's been exquisitely put together, not just the design of it, but even the way in which you present the book. Would you like to share a little bit about the inspiration behind that?
You know, when I was thinking about the design of the book, I wanted to reference the traditional Indian khata, you know, with its 4 flaps, which was traditionally used to store important manuscripts. And I'd also just stumbled on these wonderful boxes traditionally used by Japanese publishers for the exquisite hand-painted artworks. And I thought, maybe let's reference an ancient Asian practice. And I did replace the Japanese bone buttons with hammered brass, which I felt closer to home and much more Indian. And I just wanted to talk about 2 aspects of the paintings. The first is the fine quality and level of craftsmanship. As you can see from the screen, each painting measures only about 12 inches by 10 inches. And it is just incredible to see the manner in which everything has been detailed. The intricacy of the lace, the very fine depiction of the Shringara elements, the backdrops, the jewels, the clothes. It's quite remarkable to have this level and attention of detail done over 100 years ago. Another very interesting feature to me is that even though these artworks were 100 years ago, is that some of them are so contemporary even today. The top row, right. The stripes, the squares, and a favorite is the painting illustrating the celebration of Sharad Purnima, which, as you know, is the most important festival for Srinathji followers, with the brocade pitchwise studded with moon-shaped stars displayed at the back. I think it's rather contemporary in its whole depiction. Another strong contemporary element is the minimalism. Just look at these paintings, the single-colored paintings, and they're so modern and the utter lack of decoration. And it's quite striking that the Tilkayat would have conceived of these 100 years ago.
I think that's a very important point that you're making, that, you know, I think we should explain all the people listening in that Tilkayat Govardhan Lalji would have played a big role in in dictating to his artists what he wanted, because clearly this is a very prestigious set that is then probably gifted by him to your ancestor Patnalalji. But I do think that the contemporariness of these pitchwise and paintings with these solid colors, I mean, this is so unusual even to my eyes, and I've seen so many works. One of the things that one of the great artists from Nathdwara of the 20th century, Narottam Narayan, always said was that the artists, they had to always be, what was in trend, because after all, they were creating works for the Vaishnavas to buy and take home. So, I mean, you really see that this joyful use of color, many of them, new colors that are now available to these artists. And especially, as Sharan was commenting earlier, that silver and the black, I mean, it's just so exquisite. So at this point, I'd love to kind of turn to Sharan. Sharan, you yourself have, been impacted by Pushtimarg aesthetics, and you've shown several artists who have played with Pushtimarg aesthetics, some of them being Pushtimarg themselves. Would you like to share with us a little bit more about some of those exhibitions and some of the artists that you have shown over the years?
I'd love to. Priya, can you share my screen, please? So what I'm going to do is very quickly show you some of the contemporary artists who have used, we did a beautiful show called A Way of Grace, and this was a show that we did a few years ago, and that was my first conversation with Madhu when we started talking about how the authorship of the artisans becomes very important, and we talked about the contemporary artists, and then we put this show together. So I'm showing you the work of some of the artists who are completely inspired by the Pushtimarg, by Shrinathji, and their work is very contemporary. As you can see, they've taken elements of the pitchwise, but converted them into very contemporary paintings. So this is Yugal Kishore Sharma. We've had 2 or 3 shows of his, and they've always been very successful because he is one of those people who's enormously talented. And the work, I can't even show you the detail over here. When you look at it on the screen, you don't see how beautiful it is, but they're absolutely exquisite. The lines Stunning. And, the subtle colors, they're all so beautiful. Can we go to the next slide, please? Then we have Lalit Sharma, who also has used the pitchwise aesthetic, but in a very, very contemporary way, because his works are very stark. He does very large canvases. I mean, they're really large. Some of them are as large as 6 feet by 4 feet. And you see these elements of architecture coming in a beautiful way. So he actually takes from the miniature painting, but brings also the entire Shrinathji aesthetic into this, into his work. Can we go to the next slide, please? Then we have Kapil Sharma, who has been doing the most contemporary works. They're very dramatic. He's also done a series of lenticular prints. When I say lenticular, they're the 3D prints. And you see the entire Shrinathji aesthetic, but in a completely different way. And it's amazing to see all these artists who are so drawn to these Nathdwara images and Nathdwara symbols, but they bring it out in such a vibrant and a language that's so personal. Can we go to the next slide, please? This is Rohini Singh, who is also, these are very small works and they're very beautiful. That she's, I would say, more contemporary, where she brings in the Shrinathji in such a subtle way that sometimes you're looking and you can miss him. Just like how you can go to the temple. When I went to Nathdwara, I could hardly get a glimpse of the deity. It was just one of those. And when I saw Rohini's paintings, I thought of the same thing. Can we go to the next slide, please? And then we have Narendra Singh, who's used the popular culture and brought this very, very vibrant side of all the strength of Krishna and everything into his work in a very popular visual language. And then can we go to Shan? Shan actually has been very dedicated to Shrinathji. He did a few talks for us as well. And what he did was he started using the work with a lot of collages. Like he almost adorns his paintings, just like how Shrinathji is adorned at every season and for everything. And he uses like gota for the jewelry and the fabric, and he does a lot of things. So it's very contemporary, yet he takes that entire idea of adornment into his works. So, and also Shan then continued to use this in design. So when you see how the artists have taken and brought it into their lives, Shan is one of the people who's actually taken it into his design practice as well. And so that's why I think Vikram talking about his design practice is very, very important, because I think Vikram, with his background, you've seen the beautiful book that he's produced, and also his own work, his design practice. So Vikram, will you show us some work of your design practice and share with us what you've done?
Yeah, thanks, Sharan. I just want to give some backdrop. When I started VIA with my sister Divya 20 years ago, our objective at that time was to create a modern Indian design language where we would work with local materials, then with local artisans, and draw on traditional cultural inspirations to give all of these a modern twist. And we chose to work with brass, which is a very Indian material, traditionally used to make cooking vessels and sacred objects. And among our very first cultural references that we actually turned to was the pichwai and its playful elements like the lotus, the cows, and peacocks. As we created several products, as you can see, both functional and decorative, using these motifs. You had the wall panels with Shrinathji and the banana trees. You see the cow with the herringbone, that's a handle. The peacock inspired handles. We had tables, sculptures. People couldn't get enough of the lotus, which, as some of you know, represents the blossoming from dirty clay origins and suggesting spiritual enlightenment. We had lotus tables, we had lotus lights, lotus chandeliers, even a lotus wash basin. I should just mention here that, our work is artisanal and as such highly skilled, intensive, skills that have not been formally learned in schools, but have been passed on from one generation to another, and incorporate natural material science and design that are inherent to centuries of Indian sculpture. And using this, I would like to draw attention to some recent work we've done over the last 20 years. We've progressed with our skills. And what you're seeing is a Nathdwara inspired, our own version of the pichwai that is handmade in metal using the repousse technique inspired by the traditional cloth forms, the original pichwai. And you can see that our metal artisans have literally carved out these forms as it were painted on the original textile. You can see the detail here with all the elements of the pichwai, which we've given our own design interpretation.
Stunning.
Beautiful, absolutely beautiful.
I love the lapis Shrinathji. Stunning.
Well, we decided to give it's blue for obvious reasons.
No, but I mean, the lapis really brings out the blueness of him. Yeah. Right. There was a time also when the Nathdwara artist played with the tone of color and made him more blue over time. Okay. So Sharan, you also have worked a lot with promoting crafts and artisanal work. So how's that experience been? What has it meant for you to be working with them?
It's very interesting. I think, can we share my screen, please? Priya, my background, though I have worked with art all these years, my heart has been with craft quite a lot, as I started my life really with all my friends with the Crafts Council and looking at a lot of craft. So I've always been sensitive to craft and been looking at a lot of things. So, I've always wanted to mix things. And I think what is happening now, I've come to a stage where I am mixing a lot of art. I'm working with artisans, I'm working with artists, and I'm looking at a lot of collaborative ideas. And luckily for me, I've been getting opportunities to actually show them all together. And I think that this is probably going to be much more evident in the coming exhibitions that we're doing. So let's start with looking at these artisans. This is a small show that we did on Gandhi to celebrate Gandhi's anniversary on the 30th of January. And we invited artisans who, this was actually conceptualized by Suneja. And when she showed me the idea, I was like, oh my God, it's such a beautiful show. And it was very nice to see artists step out of their comfort zone. You know, this is a Matani Pachadi, which is dedicated to Devi. But what actually these artisans had done was they came and they used the idea of Gandhi. And, you know, everybody is so familiar with Gandhi and everybody. So it was so spontaneous and so fabulous. So this is how you see the artisans actually stepping out and almost becoming artists. Then you'll see this more and more now, when you look at people like Jangar Singh Sham, when you look at all of them, they have their own identity, and today they are all collectible. So it's the beginning of what we talked about many years ago, Madhu, of the idea of the authorship for artisans. Can we go to the next slide? I'm just showing you very few slides. This is Ajrak work, and Imtiaz has done, again, he was in the Gandhi show. So he's done this very lovely large Ajrak, which is with the print and his drawing as well. Can we go to the next slide? So the other thing is artists who've collaborated with artisans, and this is also another area which I've been seeing, and I think many people are interested in this whole thing. So Princess P has worked in Etikopaka, and she's created this entire range of tiny, tiny sculptures, which are her characters, and she's developed those. Can we see the next slide? So this is another work of hers, which is a Kali, and they're very small, they're tiny, and she's packaged them beautifully with her paintings on the boxes, and you know, the whole story is there, and they're all collectible works. Can we go to the next slide? And Ankon, he's an architect and an artist who works with paper. He works with the idea of folding paper and then using different forms, and he's done some fabulous work. And I picked this because I thought it was very nice to show this Ras Leela. He named it Ras Leela, it was not me. And it was these dancing lights that he had done. So Ankon actually borders on being a designer and an artist, because all his works are, you know, they're limited edition, etc. And he does these most creative things. He does large installations, which are, you know, which are huge, and he uses different materials. Sometimes it's paper, sometimes it's leather, sometimes it's metal. And I have used him in some projects as well as in some shows. And, you know, I do projects for some of my clients, either the architects or for homes, and we then do site-specific work. So Ankon has done some fabulous work for us for this. And then you come to real designers using craft. And this is Ashish Shah, who is a very well-known designer. He has worked in Chennapatna and has created this totem. And this is actually many small mudas. They're little stools that he has put together in this very sculptural form. It's utilitarian, and yet it's sculptural. So, you know, you're seeing this drama with designers using crafts. I mean, there are many, many designers that I can talk about who are now using craft in a very contemporary way. Can we see the next slide? And this is, again, Ashish, who's done these works in Long P, which are the black, you see the little black teapots and everything, but he's used it again in a very sculptural form and made these objects which could be used as vases, etc. Can we go to the next slide? So that's it for now. That's it. Thank you, Priya. I'll come back to this later on. So, you know, when we've been working on projects, I've been seeing, like how Vikram has worked with artisans, there are people who've been doing some fantastic work with craft. And I think, you know, this is evolving. This has come to stay. They're artists, they're designers, there's everybody working with craft. And I think that really is the confluence, the meeting point between art, craft, and design. And it's nice to see this. And a lot of people are also collaborating with them.
But Sharan, why
one point here? Sorry, I just want to bring one, since you're talking about craftsman is when you separate the artisan and the designer, one thing which works well, and in our experience when we started, was what the Indian government has been conferring the status of master craftsman across different fields. And when
Yes,
we first
yes.
started, that's how we went about it. We had a list of master craftsmen and that's how we first started collaborating when we started our work 20 years ago. And that's been a wonderful initiative. It's just that we need more patronage of these master craftsmen and more design impetus, more design handholding to take it to the next level.
And also perhaps more gallerists and galleries representing their work, not just in India, but also internationally. Sharan, I mean, one of the things that you and I have also talked about over the years has been how hesitant galleries have been to represent this type of work, this type of design. I mean, of course, as we know, it has its challenges. But why do you think galleries have been so hesitant to come into this space?
I think this is a field that is in its infancy, Madhu, and I think this will take shape soon. Because 40 years ago when we started working with contemporary art, nobody even thought there was anything called contemporary art in India. And I think because design is so evolved in Europe and America that people haven't realized that the Indian aesthetic is an important aesthetic. And people like Vikram are few and far between. We have very few designers that are doing fabulous work. So I think it'll take its time, but I think it's happening. It's definitely happening.
That's wonderful to hear. Vikram, share with us your global experience. Tell us what it's been like to take Indian design out to the West.
Well,
what have been the challenges? What's excited you?
Well, as Sharan pointed out, even in the West, it's only recently over the last couple of years that design has come to the attention of collectors, and that's through via your traditional platforms of reputed art galleries and auction houses. And over the last few years, you've had art galleries such as Carpenter's Workshop, Ralph Pucci, Todd Merrill, and they've promoted design stalwarts like Gio Ponti, Lalanne, Gabriella Crespi, Paul Evans, some new designers. It's just taken form in the last 7 or 8 years. We are represented internationally by one of these galleries, New York-based Todd Merrill. And I would think that from my experience, a number of things have contributed to this. I mean, first, I think, is that we work with a material, brass, which is rare and unique to the global platform. Second, as you can see from our screen, our designs appeal to an international audience and are completely India agnostic in design. I mean, I really don't think the lotus would have fared well as it does in India. Third has been the attention to quality and very refined craftsmanship, which takes a lot of R&D, as I explained earlier, and patience. You've got a long procedure, the technical skills which evolve. It takes a lot of time. And also, I think what's happening is that as with art, collectors want one-of-a-kind pieces, limited edition pieces with design, not mass-produced products. And so we've been able to offer that and speak in that language of actually producing limited edition series. For example, what you saw even in India, what you saw with our repousse panels with the Nathdwara, we are selling them as works of art because each is one of a kind. They have our own original design. So it takes a number of things to kind of get on this nascent platform, not only in India, but in the West.
So what challenges when you're kind of bringing craftsmen, artisans into this designed product? You have a particular vision and you're trying to get artisans, craftsmen who are perhaps can't even conceive going to be European. How do you kind of, I mean, okay, you identify people who have the ability to do it through, say, these government schemes, but still producing at this level and always maintaining that standard is not the easiest, right?
No, it's not. And, it's taken a lot of time. And what craftspeople, they hesitate. They're very good at repeating what they've been doing. And you see this across
the repeat aspect,
Nathdwara, and there's no creativity. And I think creativity also involves some amount of risk-taking. And if you have a patron and who's willing to pay for sampling and risk-taking, then they may go in that direction. But if it left on their own devices, they're just very happy in their own skin. So it really requires, a bit of design and a bit of patronage to get the craft people to move out of their comfort zone.
I think the patronage becomes the most important aspect, Vikram. That's where people like you come in.
But also, you find when I see some graduates coming out of some of the design schools, etc. I mean, everyone is kind of stuck. Many people are stuck. There are some great sparks, but at some level, I don't know, I think there needs to be some kind of systemic shift in the way one thinks. You can get many wooden elephants produced here, but try and get something changed, and it's a challenge.
Yeah, I always give the example of the paper mache, the Kashmiri paper mache. I am so fed up of seeing just, these boxes. But of course, they're doing the most incredible work with paper mache. But, it often doesn't get the eyeballs simply because the mass produced is so much better known, is marketed to all these handicraft fairs, etc. And so people outside think that's the only thing that is being produced with paper mache. So, sometimes we really have to elevate, and we have to kind of think out of the box and how we kind of market these things.
In a way, it's very interesting when you see that, for example, in textiles and shawls, there has been innovation. But in terms of hard product, it's been less so. And part of it also has been over the last decade or more, people with Pottery Barn and Habitat and all this mass scale production in India of metal sheet, of wooden frame, etc., etc. All that skill has gone to this kind of homogenization of product. There's been, I think that's changing, it's changing, but still very slowly.
But what worries me in all of that is, of course, the authorship aspect. So, I mean, as a designer, the kind of name recognition that you will get is very different from, say, us waiting to see those people emerge from the artisanal, the crafts communities, and also get that kind of name recognition for their work.
But Madhu, I'll tell you, that is happening slowly too. So now you have people like Vikram using great craftspeople and producing it. So it's a collaboration. But then you also see craftspeople. Say you look at these textile weavers who are doing these double cuts, or you look at people like Anjaya, who works in Andhra Pradesh and does these beautiful ikat things, and you can recognize it because of the skill. So I think slowly the idea of authorship, I mean, it's really very much in its nascent stage, but it's happening.
And I think what's really pushing this, and it's really important to make note of this, is technology. So today, if you're on Instagram, you'll be just amazed at the number of new brands which are emerging out of India, which are talking about, because there's very little investment. So they're working with wonderful textiles, they're working with different crafts, they're working with different materials from Ladakh to South India. It's incredible how technology has changed. Technology has changed the way we sell products, has changed, and encouraging design and innovation across different materials.
But it also then brings up the issue of people then copying, right? Because we've had incidents where, something's been produced by Indian artists or craftspeople, which has then been copied by international brands. So at least you can, because of the way in which social media has worked, it's highlighted those issues of authorship as well.
But some amount of copying is there.
It happens.
We've learned to live with it. As a wise lady told me, Vikram, it's a great compliment to be copied. But but some of these crafts are salient to India. I mean, we are blessed with having perhaps the most diverse and most number of craft skills than any other country in the world. So I think it's very difficult. I mean, I would think that we've scored big time if the West is copying Indian design. Then I think we've reached somewhere.
Well, I mean, I think for me, the most important thing is that this should, all these crafts should continue to flourish long after we are dead and gone, So I think it's very important what happens to all these people at this particular time when things are changing so rapidly in India.
Yeah, and also then you come into, what's interesting is that, supposing you have a craft community, say, for example, musical instruments, and, made out of bamboo, and you've got various craft organizations who are subsidizing them. I mean, sometimes there's technological change which forces people to change, shift skills and upgrade. But if you have, it's a tough question, because then if you have subsidies, then they're going to go on producing musical instruments, which no one wants to buy. So there has to be some concerted effort, I think, at reskilling, retooling, and, how do you get people to move to the next level, and upgrade their skills? Okay, given that craft and is in their DNA, how do you start getting them to shift to something which is more relevant in today's world? I think that's a big challenge.
I think the whole idea of exposure, and I think this pandemic, because of technology, has made that little shift, Vikram, because you're seeing artisans change a little bit. It's
but
very.
For example, like what you've seen thanks to the efforts of people like Madhu, what you've seen in Nathdwara. I don't think there's something, say, for example, in the Mysore School of Painting or the Tanjore School of Painting. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, very little, but I'll tell you what, actually it's interesting because you bring up the Mysore School and the Tanjore School, which are very similar. And this whole art form was dying till Meena Muttaya from Chettinad decided to revive it. And when she revived it, she started a school and she started training all these artisans who were very good and they were very competent. But what happened was, because it was the material, the information and the technology became available and the craft skills were being taught so openly and with a complete transparency, that the Tanjore paintings went into, I want to say, a downward spin, because everybody was doing Tanjore painting. So it's very difficult to give it authorship like we've been discussing. So it became almost like a mass market product. And now there are Tanjore paintings that are small, big, large, gigantic, all this sort of stuff, from doors to windows to cupboards to all this. However, having said that, let me say that I have been seeing one or two people using it differently. And one example I have is this artist, Ramachandran, who's a young boy from Tamil Nadu. And he did this work. I don't know if any of you have seen the Hyatt Regency lobby, where he's used the Tanjore paintings, but the glass paintings in a deconstructed way. And he's also done work in the, yes, this is a slide of his. Actually, can we go to the first slide first? So his work was, he used the Shilpa Shastras as part of his idea of aesthetics. And then these are two works. One is a contemporary work where he's used the Tanjore painting juxtaposed with photographs. And then the other one is a cupboard that he did when we did an exhibition for Crafts Council, where we used a collaborative idea between artists and artisans. And he used them. And again, he used that idea of deconstructing the thing. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see two of the big projects that he's done. One is the Bombay Airport project, and the other is the Hyatt Regency. The Hyatt Regency is the glass paintings, and the other one, the Bombay Airport, is where he did the repoussé, where, the relief work of Tanjore. So in some ways, he's taken it and he's run with the technique and the craft. But I don't see this happening a lot. It happens very little. And so, one has to think about these things, and I think encourage these kind of people as well. And this is a little bit of a stumbling block, that certain crafts are stuck, and there are very few people who can take it out of that area. And Madhu, you've done something with the Nathdwara school. You should actually tell us a little bit about how to actually handle this, because this Tanjore painting is definitely a problem, and you need to, this whole idea of authorship, identity, all this is important. So you tell us a little bit about what you've done with the Nathdwara group of artists that you worked with. Maybe you can give us some inputs on what are the techniques, how can we actually work with groups of craft clusters?
Well, Sharan, it's so wonderful to see that example from the Bombay Airport. I think the Bombay Airport has been such an incredible project,
yeah.
Because of Raji Sethi and, all of you collaborating with him. It has given an opportunity to so many artists of every every type of work, an opportunity to present some of their best works there. I mean, what to me has been one of the striking features of the Terminal 2 at Chhatrapati Shivaji Airport has been the fact that, there's no distinction made between contemporary artists, the traditional artists, the folk artists, and all of those divisions, thank God, for once have been put aside. Well, when I was curating Gates of the Lord, I was very clear that if at the end of it, the artists of Nathdwara did not get any recognition, then what would have been the point of doing this exhibition? So this is, the artists all gathered together just before my exhibition when we decided to actually set up the Artists of Nathdwara as an organization. It was really set up by them. I was just the kind of the enthusiast trying to get everyone together. It wasn't that some of the artists weren't well known. In fact, showed the work from three of the prominent of artists who are descended from the hereditary artists of Nathdwara. You've shown Yugalji, who in fact is a descendant from Sukhdev Kishandas, who has done the majority of the works in Vikram's book. You showed the work of Lalit Sharma, who is and his son Kapil Sharma, who are descended also from one of the very famous late 19th, early 20th century artists of Nathdwara. So there are, of course, artists emerging from Nathdwara who are being recognized for their work across the board. But I was really more keen to start working with the artists who are still practicing the tradition of especially Pichwai painting and, of course, other types of painting. The Pichwai particularly was very badly impacted in recent years. And so that has been the focus of the Artists of Nathdwara, to kind of bring the Pichwai to the forefront. And recently during the pandemic, the bazaars of Nathdwara, which are always a hive of activity, had shut down for many, many months. And that was when we decided to relaunch the website. Here you see the Vishal Bawashri, the Tilkayat's son, and C.P. Joshi, who's the MLA from this region, inaugurating the relaunch of the website, which actually, thankfully, a group of students who volunteered from SRCC College in Delhi, the Enactors group, they helped me, revamp the website. And the idea behind the revamp was that while the older website had, a little bit about the artists, we really realized, and the artists realized, that they needed access to the markets directly. And so you can actually go into the website and select whoever artist's work that you like, and you can commission an order. But I mean, the most important thing about these orders is the fact that, every piece of work has to be commissioned. So sometimes, people are struck by the prices. Sometimes people are struck by the fact that, it takes so long to get, it's not something that is, sitting in a shop. You have to commission these works because, based on how many days an artist spends on each Pichwai, they charge accordingly. So, how is it that we can pay lakhs of rupees for a Patan Patola, but when it's a Pichwai, we hesitate about waiting 1 month for a Pichwai? I mean, that kind of mindset and the issue about price is something that I am truly struggling with. But this is a platform so that people can directly access the artists, so that now, this business of, not knowing who to go to should be removed. And more of the artists are from Nathdwara are joining us. And it's been a struggle because I'm a curator. This is not my field of expertise. And but at the same time, it is something. It's a way for these artists to reach out to the public directly, and for the public to get to know them individually. And I'm hoping in time that will set their own prices, and people will be recognized for their work universally. So this is now no longer about India. It's a global platform.
That's fantastic. I mean, this is really a great way for us to go forward with a lot of the craft clusters. And they have been, during the pandemic, there have been a lot of platforms for crafts that have come up. But this idea of authorship is something we need to revisit time and again. After today's talk, I thought it's so important. We saw this beautiful collection, and we're seeing how, of course, Vikram took the idea from his family thing and made it his own, and did such a wonderful job of it. And it would be lovely for us to get more collectors and more people who have actually got these hidden gems in their things to come out and share them and make publications. And today making publications is also quite easy. And it's simple. There's print on demand and whatnot. Because when I'm talking to all my other friends who are looking for publishers, then they all come out with these fantastic solutions, which I think are all workable. So I think we're slowly running out of time. So I don't know if both of you want to say anything to wind up what we're doing before we start asking any questions. What shall we go to the questions? Would you like to say something to close this, Madhu?
I just wanted to say that I completely agree and echo what you just said about people coming forward, and we should be trying to find different ways to assist people with collections. And one of the most important is, in fact, that these hereditary artists of Nathdwara all have very, very major collections in their own families. So,
Wow.
Archiving them. Yeah, I know this is something that is that should be the subject of 500 PhDs. I mean, that is the amount of material here. So I'm constantly asking college students, I'm constantly asking people to come and work on PhDs here, because there are so many more artists. You heard about one artist, Sukhdevji, but there were so many artists, and all of the families are descended from these artists of the late 19th, early 20th century. So even in one place like Nathdwara in India, if you have that amount of material, I mean, and India is replete with places like this.
Absolutely.
I mean, I have to say that Nathdwara is unique because it's one single place where you have that many hereditary artists still practicing the art. But of course, as we all know, there are Varanasis and Tanjores and many, many other places like that, that we all need to actively help support and bring to the public domain.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, we're so lucky. Like Vikram said, we're the only country with such a vast heritage of artisanal techniques and skills, and we've got to be proud of it. So Vikram, tell us, do you want to say something to round up?
We've seen enough of limitations on the supplier side, artisans and being with skills and creativity and galleries, but there's also something on the demand side. And I think to some extent, at least at a certain income level, Indians still want to, well-heeled Indians still want to buy from Italy and Germany. And there's still some sense of that element of, let's not look in our own backyard. It's slowly changing. And I work with interior designers and architects. And I've seen for the last 20 years, we've been trying to, get Make in India and be proud of Make in India. And it's only in the last couple of years we have seen a shift where and these designers stand out in terms of also speaking a local language and working with artisans, and but a majority of them are not, and they are the intermediaries to the people, to the new rich who are spending. And so I think that there's a bit of a chicken and egg story, because you're not coming up with the good designs, and or is it because the patrons are not encouraging you to come up with the good designs? So it's a bit of a conundrum.
But Vikram, when you see a 2-year-old child talking gibberish, and then suddenly in 2 months they're talking sentences, I think we're in that stage. Which very soon this is just going to take over. I can almost feel it when I'm seeing this, because we are looking at people like you, we're looking at other gallerists, we're looking at the interest that's built up amongst the public, and it's moving quite fast. And I think the visibility is there. So it's a good time to be in this. It's a lovely time to be in this.
Fingers crossed.
Yes, absolutely. So let's see if we have any questions. Anya, do we have any questions?
Yes, it's been a very nice, informative conversation. Lovely to tune in. We have 2 questions. First one is for Madhuvanti. And the question is, how can we get artists to be more creative?
Wow, that's a very important question. Artists or artisans, both?
Well, I would say that the artist's creativity is obviously the artist's. You know, that is what that needs to come from within an artist. So I don't think we can dictate the creativity that is coming out of an individual. All we can do really is shape that. We can help, you know, give it direction. We can help. I mean, my role as a curator, for example, is constantly to throw light on areas that are not represented as well. It's not, I don't see my role only as being a curator to show the best and the most famous. The most famous already has access, you know. I think for me, bringing out voices that are sometimes not known, bringing out voices that might get hidden, that are a little bit, you know, don't get the spotlight, is really what I see. I'm a little bit of an activist curator, as you can see from some of my work. I'm passionate about what I do, which is why I think that curating is such a wonderful field. It gives me the opportunity to get up on my bandwagon and push certain artists. But I don't think I can dictate an artist's creativity. I don't think any of us can. With craftsmen and with artisans, and I really want us to also think about these terms that we use, because in India, we're too much in this Victorian era of where we use language without thinking about it, and we forget the history behind the art and crafts movement. And in India, it's become like a second-class use of terms when we're thinking about a craftsperson or an artisanal. In fact, in the West, the artisanal is what we pay a lot of money for. So, I mean, we've got to also change our mindset, you know, along with this idea that everything from foreign is great. Everything from the West is fabulous. We need to actually look at what's happened in Japan and how they value the work of the hand. Even in the West, you know, it's the people who are working with their hands who are the most creative, but we have not given it the same platform. So I think I'm very careful in how I think about who I call a craftsperson, who I call an artisan, who I call an artist. And for me, the artists of Nathdwara are perfect examples of this. They are artists. They have been artists for generations. And for a while, of course, they stopped writing their names because, of course, within the tradition, this is religious art. This is part of their seva. So when it's part of your seva, you don't necessarily put your name. But, you know, I am encouraging them to put their names and tell us about their personal stories as we are marketing it to a non-religious, you know, the drawing rooms or to the museums, because we do need artists to reclaim their own space and their own work.
I think the idea of anonymity was because a lot of the work was for veneration and for religious purposes.
Yes, exactly.
You know, you're going to run into a problem when, you know, when, for instance, you know, if you have patrons who are branded patrons like us, like ourselves, and then it's the designer who's taking forefront, not the craft person, right? So there is that problem.
Well, it depends, Vikram, because I mean, when I was showing Nilima Sheikh, she was absolutely categorical that all the people who, you know, like her Sanji makers, for example, she recognized them and we put their names on the walls. So I think it varies depending on who it is.
Yeah, but you know, for a design house where you work with a team of designers and you have multiple craftspeople, it becomes very difficult. And I'm not sure constructive to single out. I mean, you know, how do you identify this as one person's contribution? It's a challenge. It's a sad challenge, actually, because you would want to, you know, give credit where it's due.
I think authorship ideas are changing. This is fast evolving, and more people want to know who's the person behind that pieces.
But my point is, there's not one single person oftentimes, most times.
Well, then you put a group of names. I mean, that's the way we look at it, even if it's a wall that takes up a lot of space. I mean, there are certain artists who actually want the people who have helped them in different ways to be acknowledged, and we go with that. So it's more of a curatorial decision. It's more of a artist-led decision, but increasingly, this is because of the social justice movement that is now taking over contemporary. And more, this is now penetrating every aspect of our work, that we want, recognition across the board. Even that one curator's work is actually the work of multiple hands. It takes a huge team to create that one exhibition. So increasingly, there is a tendency to want to acknowledge that, to be grateful.
Yep.
Absolutely. Another question you said, Anya?
Yes, this is for Vikram. The question is how to get craftspeople to push up their standards.
Well, as I said earlier, it's really allowing them the leeway to stretch their creativity and skills, and is to, in some way have someone to pay for their mistakes. So if you have patronage and, you allow them to sample across different axes, I think they will push themselves. At least that's what we found with the artisans we worked with.
Okay, great. Any more questions? We've actually gone past our time. So maybe we should wind up. And I want to thank everybody who's been on it. We've had a lot of friends and admirers of both of you who've been on the platform listening to both of you. Thank you so much, Vikram, and thank you so much, Madhu. Madhu, you've woken up and done this for us, or before you started your day. So thank you, and have a lovely day. And thank you, Vikram. Thanks so much. This was a wonderful, wonderful evening. And I hope all of you have enjoyed it. Please stay tuned for our next few talks. And we look forward to seeing you again. Okay.
Thank you, Sharan. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Sharan. This has been such a pleasure. Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night and bye-bye. Bye.